Have you ever noticed how common it is for Christian men to be weak and ineffective? If so, you are not alone, and I'm right there with you. There is a reason Christian men have a widespread reputation for being weak, fearful, non-threatening pushovers. We're talking about men who supposedly have the power of the living God on their side and the word of the living God in their hands to show them how to live and to lead, and yet, when we take a close look at the average Christian man, especially in the West, what do we see? We see people playing it safe, not leading their families with strength and conviction and authority. We see men who are afraid to challenge the status quo, who are afraid to rock the boat, who are afraid of confrontation because they are more concerned and obsessed with being liked and seen as nice than they are with being effective and walking in the calling and purpose and role that was given to them by God. If you are anything like me, not only are you absolutely fed up with that version of castrated Christianity, but you are absolutely fed up with those types of Christian male leaders. You want more. You want to live big. You want to live out God's promises. You believe that God has made you for more and has more for you and has given you authority here on earth to establish dominion. If you are anything like me, you refuse to be that average individual and you want to become something more. So I am going today to give you 3 reasons Christian men are weak and ineffective. If you don't have something to write with, grab a pencil, pause this, come back. We're going to dive in. It's not going to be a long video today. It's going to be pretty brief. But these are the 3 main reasons Christian men are weak and ineffective, all right? Number 1, keep it simple. Guys, we don't know who God is. Now, let me be clear. I realize you know who God is, all right? But I'm not talking about it in a general sense. Yeah, I know who God is. He's that guy up there. Yep, he made the world. Yeah, he loves me. Yeah, he died on the cross, came back from the dead, all that good stuff, gave me the Bible. I'm supposed to live according to it, all right? I'm not talking about a general knowing about God. That'd be like me saying, you know who your wife is? You go, oh yeah, and I know who my wife is. No, I'm talking about knowing God's character. You don't know your wife from a distance. You don't know your wife in a general sense. You know her tone. You've lived with her long enough to where you know when she says certain things, whether she's angry or not. You know her tendencies. You know her patterns of behavior. You know how reliable she is. That's what I'm talking about. We are unclear and unbelieving in the character of God. So when I'm saying we don't know who God is, we are not sure about God's character. We live in one of 2 places, always. It's actually one of the better commencement speeches I've ever heard was given by Jim Carrey, and of all people. And Jim Carrey talked about faith and fear and living in one of those 2 places. Everything you do either comes from a place of faith or love, or fear or doubt, right? Fear and doubt, faith and love, they go together. So you are either living in fear or you're living in faith. That's it. It's 2 options. There is no in between. And last video I actually shared briefly, I'll keep this real short, but I simply described what faith is and what fear is, all right? Faith and doubt, or fear, we got fear and doubt over here, we got faith over here. Faith is a belief, but so is doubt and so is fear. Most people think that faith is belief, and in the absence of belief, you have doubt or fear. Wrong. They are both choices. They are both individual choices. Here's why. When you have faith, you are counting on or banking on the outcome that you believe God has for you. It is the better outcome. It is the outcome for good. When you've got that faith, you've got that belief, it fills you with anticipation for the outcome you are expecting, and so you behave in a completely different way knowing that it's coming. You know what I'm talking about. When you know something's coming, you behave in a different way than if you're wondering something's coming. You make plans. The actions you take are vastly different when you know where you're headed. That's faith. Fear or doubt, on the other hand, is also a choice. It is a belief or a banking on or a counting on the outcome you don't desire, the negative outcome, the destructive thing. And that counting on or banking on that outcome fills you with anxiety about that upcoming thing that you are expecting. And now because you're expecting that, you are behaving in a completely different way than you would have if you believed in the opposite outcome. We've got faith, and we've got fear and doubt. We live in one of those two places. And what I've realized more than anything is that fear is sin. I'll say it again, fear is sin. Go look through the scriptures and see how many times it was a command of God to mankind, fear not. All right? That's just one aspect of it. But here's the other aspect. I've come to realize over time, throughout my life, when I was growing up, people say, don't sin. Oh, that's a sin. I grew up kind of categorizing the word sin and thinking it's just a list of things that I'm not supposed to do. God just came up with this list of stuff where he's like, all right, don't do all these things and you'll be good. Like this is violating what I want, right? Don't do these things. That's sin. Anything on that list, it's just bad stuff. But as I've matured and grown and come to understand God better throughout my life, I've come to understand that sin is not just a list of bad things. Sin is anything that steps outside the character of God. That is what sin is. We don't not kill innocent people or murder innocent people. We don't avoid that because it's on God's sin list. The reason it's considered as a sin is because it's not reflective of God. And this all goes back to we don't know God's character. When we don't know God's character, we don't know who we are or who we are supposed to be. When we know God's character, we know what he has, we know his promises, we know that he follows through, we behave in a vastly different way. This leads me to point number 2. We don't know who we are. We're in an identity crisis. Number 1 was we don't know who God is. We don't know his character. But that leads us to number 2. If we don't know God's character, we can't know who we are. Why? Because of how we were created. Go look at Genesis chapter 1, where it talks about the creation of man and God's first command to mankind. Go into all the earth, establish dominion, conquer everything, rule over it, right? That's God's first command. But before his first command, it says that God said, let us create man in our image, in our likeness, let's create him. We were made to be a reflection of God. Remember how I just talked about sin is not just on God's list of bad no-nos. It is anything that steps outside of the character of God. It is God's desire that not only do we reflect him, but we walk in step with him. That's why fear is sin. God isn't a fearful individual. When we're walking with God, we cannot walk in fear. We know where our confidence comes from. We know where the truth lies. We know who the anchor is. That's identity. When we know who God is and we're clear on that, and we're clear that God made us to be a reflection of his image, and that we're not to walk in fear, we're supposed to walk in step with him, it tells us who we are supposed to be. When I'm clear on what my identity is, it tells me how I am to behave in the world. Think about this. And I've probably used this before, or this analogy before, but I played high school sports. If you played high school sports, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. When I was a freshman, I walked in the gym differently than when I was a senior. Not because of my title, but because of the work I'd put in. Because of the mountain of evidence behind me that showed me, oh, I'm allowed to take that shot. I know this is the right shot. I know I'm faster than this individual. I know what my skill set is. That identity caused me to walk in the gym a different individual between year 1 and year 2. Here's another example. Just because I walked in the gym as a senior at the high school with confidence does not mean I'm going to walk into some Division I college gym the same way, unless my identity has changed. If we're not clear on who God is, we cannot be clear on who we are to be. We must get clear on his character to know what our character must be. We must get clear on the steps he would take so that we can step in the same place with confidence and surety. Everything we do as individuals comes from our identity. Every word we say, every thought we think, every action we take comes from who we believe ourselves to be. So number 1 was we don't know God. We're unclear on who he is. Number 2 is we have been unclear on who we are. We're not sure about our identity. We don't know that we walk in the room with confidence. Here's another way I love to put it. If we were to be made in God's image, And he put his stamp of approval and authority on us to work out his will in the world. Go find it in Scripture, guys. It's there plenty. That is God's plan. We are supposed to walk in his power in the earth. If we are unclear on that identity, we won't walk in that power. It will not happen. Think about it as if you were an individual, maybe medieval times. You walk out the door. You're just a peasant. You can't say anything to anyone without being smacked. You're non-existent. You're not important. You're the lowest of the low. Now imagine the king comes by and gives you his signet ring of authority. Wouldn't you walk about the city a little differently? You'd be able to say whatever you wanted to anyone you wanted. You'd be able to give any command and know confidently that it would be obeyed immediately. That is identity. It's knowing who you are because you know whose you are. Got to know who he is in order to know who we are. Number 3, the reason Christian men are weak and ineffective is because we don't live where God lives. Throughout Scripture, and likely throughout your own life, you can look at example after example. I like to use Moses as an example. What I have found through Scripture is that God does not live or reside in the world of the humanly possible. God resides and works in the realm of the humanly impossible. Get that again. God does not operate in the humanly possible. He operates in the humanly impossible. All right, there's some nuance here. I'm clear that you can talk to God anywhere and that he's effective and always working no matter what you're doing. God is working while I'm reading the Scripture on the couch. He's giving me, he's speaking to me and giving me truth. When I'm acting in my everyday, God is giving me courage and giving me the strength to take action. All right, I'm clear on that. I'm talking about mighty acts and mighty works of God here. That's what I'm talking about. Because that's the entire topic here. Weak and ineffective Christian men are weak and ineffective because they do not have the faith to operate in massive ways to actually lead, change the status quo, and rock the boat in a significant way. That's the type of action I'm talking about. I'm not talking about mediocre stuff here. Let's take Moses for an example. I love this example. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, walking across the desert. Don't even know where they're really headed, just following God's orders, on the way to the Red Sea. Now they look behind them. What do they see? Pharaoh and his armies coming to collect them. No, you're coming back to Egypt. We're not letting you go. We're going to kill you guys if you don't come back. All this fear that must have been in Moses and the people of Israel at that moment. The Egyptians, we just escaped however many years of slavery. These people are either going to kill us or take us back to slavery. What are we going to do? And yet God did not move. He said, keep walking toward the sea. Do what I told you to do. So Moses and the people still walk toward the sea. Still walk toward the sea. They get to the sea. There's no opening. God, what are you going to do? How are we ever going to overcome this thing? How are we ever going to move forward? God still says, not yet. Moses, step in the water. Moses still had to step in the water. God still says, no, I'm not moving yet. Moses, lift your hands. Moses has to lift his hands. The Egyptians are almost upon them, ready to slaughter the Israelites as they're trying to get to the Red Sea. And what does God do in that moment? The moment of impossibility, where he had taken the people from simple obedience out of captivity into this place of massive danger, into this place of human impossibility. God required those people, required Moses and the people of Israel to still walk in obedience in the place where it was possible for them to obey. But it was only when they reached the place where it was impossible for them to do anything on their own that God moved and showed himself powerful and parted the seas for them. That is where God operates. He operates in every place, but I'm talking about massive supernatural movement here. I'm talking about giving you strength to move mountains and start businesses and create movements and reshape your legacy and change your family line. I'm talking about powerful moves of God here. God will not reside in a place where you are perfectly capable to do something on your own. That's not where God moves. God moves when you reach a place of, I can't do this on my own anymore. There is nothing left. I am living in faith. I'm living outside of what I believe I'm capable of because I know who you are. That tells me who I am. I believe in your promises, and now I'm going to step into a place of faith where you reside so you can move on my behalf. Christian men are not weak and ineffective because they're Christian. They are often weak and ineffective because they call themselves Christians but have never gone through the change of allowing God to live through them. It's where I lived for most of my life. I had to get to a place where I recognized God's character so that I could take on his character. I had to get to a place where I stopped trying to find my identity in what I knew, what I had accomplished, what I could do with my own hands, and I had to start walking believing that I have the signet ring of the Father on my hand and I have authority to go change the world. And once I get to that place, I have to go beyond simple obedience to a place of complete trust and faith in God, where I cannot do this on my own, where it is physically impossible for me. So if God lives in the realm of the impossible, and we're busy living in the realm of the humanly possible, where do you think we should be trying to live more often? God doesn't move to where we are. We've got to go to where he is. If he lives in the realm of the impossible, this is where he operates, then we need to move our lives from the place of the possible into the place of the impossible. Because we know who he is, we know who he has made us to be, and that he favors us and that we are his. Guys, it's that simple. To be weak and ineffective is to not let God do it on your behalf. Just because you're good personally, just because you're good at what you do, just because you have some skills in your life, does not make you effective and it does not make you strong. We need to find our strength and our effectiveness in the Father, in our Creator, because he's the one who has given us the strength, the truth, the wisdom, and the authority to go shape our lives and change the world. Hope this video blesses you guys. Go walk it out. Get clear on who God is. Get clear on who you are. And then start living in the realm of the impossible so that God can move mightily on your behalf.